All right, guys. Well, we got a lot to get through, and I want to go ahead and get started here. I'm sure some others will jump in, but this is the eighth and final lesson of this training. And again, at the end, I want you guys to, just take 5 minutes, when we end, and type up a little bit of, what you've liked, what you not liked, what you wish, how it can be improved. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but you're not going to hurt my feelings. I want to get some good feedback so that way I can improve it. But if you enjoyed it, then let me know what specifically. Don't just say I like it. Say I like it because of whatever reason. But we're gonna jump in today. I teased this equation the other day, and it's something that I feel very very strongly about. But to have success in anything, coaching, business, whatever, it's this equation of T plus M plus E um, that equals that. And so we're going to talk a little bit about my journey and how I've used that throughout my career, and then just some recommendations that I think, as you guys are jumping into this business, how you can use it to your benefit. So I took this equation from this book called The E-Myth Revisited. It's a business book, and in it they give the example of a plumber, opening his own business, and they talk about essentially, you go to trade school to be a plumber, you come out, you work for the man, you do the job, and eventually you get kind of frustrated with the fact that somebody else is kind of benefiting off of your hard work, right? And so you start this business. But when you start this business, you start to learn that it's more than just a technical knowledge of being a plumber, right? Now you are the customer service, you are the marketing department, you're all these areas, you're the janitor staff, you're the everything for your business. And you quickly find out that being a manager of all these things, time, people, and resources, is stuff that you didn't prepare yourself for when you're in that technical stage. And then lastly, you have to be an entrepreneur. You have to be forward thinking. You have to be sharpening the sword and challenging your ideals. Um, and so I took the principles from this book, and wrote it from a strength coach perspective, which is the book, The CEO Strength Coach, that I wrote. And we're just going to kind of go through these. Technician, we're not going to spend a lot of time on, just because it's basically what we've been doing in this course, is going through programming and you know exercises and progressions and regressions. But that principle based, not philosophy based, really basing your program on principles and having a solid foundation, and keeping yourself open to all the different disciplines that are out there, keeps you current, keeps you, a chameleon in this space. And you never know when you're going to need those principles, or those tools that you have in your toolbox in various different settings. And so, if you always base your things off principles, then you can kind of adapt to whatever situation you're in. Likewise, you have to continually sharpen the sword. So just because you have this knowledge base, and I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, because you guys wouldn't be in this course if you didn't seek out additional information. But there is no shortage of coaches in this business that, basically carbon copy the program from the year before, and then just change out the year and say, here you go. And they don't ever adapt their program. They never grow it. They never add new things. I'm not saying that you can't still kind of do a lot of the same things, but you got to continually, put it through a lens and see what you can improve upon, and challenge yourself to make it better. And the only way to do that is to continue to put yourself out there and learn from different people. It's easy to get overwhelmed by the different content that's out there, and it's easy um, to jump on the flavor of the month. But the reality is that you have to truly understand what you're putting into your program. So just because you have access to it doesn't mean that that you just jump on it and change everything. And so this acronym, this focus acronym, follow one course until success, I think is very important when you're in this technical stage. Um, that it's really going deep on these topics before you put them into play. And so, for example, um, I remember when you know uh, chains came out, or um, I'm trying to think of a good example of something that came out that I wasn't quite sure. Battle ropes is a good example. When battle ropes really kind of start to kind of hit the market, I wasn't quite sure where that fit for me. I thought it was cool. I thought the exercises were neat. I could see kind of the, how it could be implemented and make it a fun deal. But it wasn't until I put myself back through the lens of the principle based and, progressions and overload and figuring out the time component and, grip component and all these different elements of the exercise, did I figure out where it went into my program and put it through that R7 kind of system. And so that kind of fits into that ESD, that resiliency category for me. And so again, don't just jump on things, but go deep, And so what I always recommend coaches do is take topics, speed, nutrition, whatever you want to do, gather a bunch of materials, write a paper about it as if you were in class, write a paper about it, what your position statement is on that topic. And then everything that you read from that point forward gets filtered through that paper, and so that way you have some really strong convictions about what you put in, what you take out. So technician, that's kind of where, again, people think these are three different levels, and they are for a lot of coaches. Most coaches you talk to in this business are technical coaches. That's all they think about. That's all they talk about. That's all they're, sets, reps, progressions. They want to sit in front of the computer all day long and write programs, and they stay in that level. And the truth is that you will make a natural evolution through the different levels, but the reality is that you need to be getting better at all the levels, at all the different categories, for you to really maximize your growth. So it's not until you become a manager, until you get put into that head strength coach role or that athletic director role, whatever it might be, that all of a sudden you're starting to manage time, people, and resources. And as I've mentioned before, you didn't go to school for that. You went to school for biology. You went to school for exercise science, whatever it is. You didn't go there for budgeting and time management and, psychology. And that's really the job, is managing those things. And so when we look at time, there's lots of different ways that time is manipulated in a strength coach's day. One of the most notable that you'll end up, if and again, we don't have cameras on everybody, but normally I would say raise your hand if you work with coaches about scheduling your teams, but that's usually a point of contention a lot of times, right? Everybody wants to use the weight room at the same time. Everybody's sport thinks that they're more important than the other sport, and it usually is a challenge. And one of the things that I adopted early on, again, this is stuff that I do on the front end whenever I'm taking a job or I'm meeting with an athletic director or I'm meeting with a coach, that I'll lay this kind of framework out. And it's benefited me well because I've been able to point back to it, right? So with an athletic director, again, you got to get in the you treat all the athletes the same in terms of respect and effort and your attention, but you can't treat them all the same when it comes to resources, and so you got to get your athletic administration on board with the fact that, hey, look, like some of these sports pay for all the other sports, and therefore we need to make sure that we garner our resources in that way. So we always put things through the lens of the revenue sports, producing sports first. Those sports that produce revenue for the university, we're going to make sure that they're taken care of, at the highest level. Then we look at the gate admission sports. So some of these sports, they don't make money for the university, but they basically they pay for themselves. And then we have a lot of sports that are in the red, that they lose money for the university, and again, you don't treat those athletes any different, but you can't allocate the resources. There's plenty of coaches. When I went to Tennessee for the first time, or when I went to Tennessee as a strength coach, there was coaches that wanted to put all these resources for 6 track sprinters, and the truth is, like, that sport just doesn't make money, and to allocate 3 strength coaches for 6 track sprinters, that's just not a good business model, you know. So getting your administration on board with that, you know, um, is good. It kind of helps set the stage, right? And it gets everybody's coaching, so now you're not dealing with the track coach or the tennis coach or the golf coach wondering why they can't get the weight room at the same time as the football team does, right? Um, Not saying don't put a lot of time and energy into them. I'm just saying that when it comes to scheduling, the revenue producing sports get first priority. From there, I always go off season over in season, and this is contrary to what a lot of strength coaches do. Right? They think that the priority goes to the in season team, and then they work the off season teams around it. And the truth is like it's completely different for us. Right? For us, team building is a major part of what we're doing through the weight room, and so training and scheduling a true strength and conditioning program, strength and conditioning, that time takes place in the off season. During the season, conditioning is being handled on the court. It's being handled on as part of practice. The weight training is minimal compared to the off season typically. And so we put priority on the off season. And then what we do at the end season is we have class blocks throughout the day that are typically in line with the class blocks of the school. And now this creates a sense of inclusion a little bit to where we have these class blocks to where we might have 4 football players, 5 golfers, 6, volleyball players, that's the time that they have available in their busy day around classes, around practice, around treatment, around everything, eating, that they just come in during that time and everybody's doing their workout. And so we all have our strength coaches on the floor. And so we'll have 4 or 5 strength coaches on the floor, but we'll also have 3 or 4 teams on the floor working at the same time. And, you might have the ability to remove some of those coaches if they have meetings, like if I'm going to meetings for football or something like that. Well, one strength coach can watch 7 athletes, but they might be 7 athletes from 7 different sports, but they're coming because, again, strength and conditioning is not the priority during that in-season time. It's important, but it's not the priority, right? You got to get all these other things in. We always go team over individual or small group. So if we can get a whole team in, that's going to take priority over just, a handful of volleyball players or a handful of golfers, right? If we can get their whole team in, that takes priority. And then we're always going to go a large team over a small team because, again, we can only allocate our resources so far. So this is not popular, but when you break it down to administration, when you break it, get them on board, and then you get then you present that to the coaches as a united front, it makes a lot of sense when you're scheduling teams. Now, for you got to manage your own time. And this book, The One Thing, is a really good book. I'm going to give you lots of book examples that you guys should go deeper on. But you got to figure out ways to deal with distraction in your own day, right? And so emails, you got to have a set time. So like for me, I'm gonna check emails 3 times a day, and only at certain times. And so like I'm not gonna have the bell go off on my phone. I'm not gonna have them pop up, in pop-ups on my screen. I want to make sure that I'm checking it when I want to check it, when I have the time set aside to address it, and training my coaches, training my administration that if it's important, you need to come find me. Don't send me an email, right? Come down and find me and talk to me. If it's not important, then I'll handle the emails at those times, right? Disorganization, like I'm a minimalist. I have very little in my office. I'm going to digitize and store where I can search it quickly on my phone. But I'm not going to have a lot of files. I'm not going to have a lot of, disorganization in my office. That again takes time. Every time, the way that I look at things is every time you're spending 5 minutes looking for something, you're taking 5 minutes away from your family, right? And if there's a bunch of things that take 5 extra minutes throughout your day, it takes 5 extra minutes to do emails. It takes 5 extra minutes to think about, um, projects and tasks or whatever it might be. So I have a plan for email, phone calls, texts, IMs. I'm going to make phone calls at specific times and typically specific days. If it's something that I can push to one of those days, Mondays are my days that I have time to, so when I go take a walk just to clear my head, and, I don't want to sit in the office and, so I'll take a walk, I'll get some fitness in for me, and I'll make 5 phone calls on that hour walk. Um, People, again, managing people, so, like having your, a door shut, having a sign on the door, hey, I'm uh, come back at office hours, things like that. That always makes it better for people to train them as to what is important. I understand having an open door, all those types of things. Build that into your day. Have an open hours that you can kind of take those things. But if you spend a little bit of time teaching people what you can do, you're going to gain back a lot of productivity time. Staying healthy, got to make sure you build time into your day to continue to train and do things, but don't do it so much that like your program, your fitness, when you're a strength coach, takes a back seat to the athletes. That doesn't mean don't do it. You got to get it in, but you got to be diligent, and you got to be consistent, and at the same time understand that things pop up, and and so you having a 3-hour training session just ain't gonna happen, right? It's just not gonna happen if you're gonna be a successful strength coach. You building that in throughout the week to where you have 30 minutes here and 30 minutes there, and you kind of, holistically get it in, definitely can happen. And projects and tasks, you gotta learn how to manage projects and tasks and have a plan for that. All right, so for me, that comes with a lot of tools. Um, the biggest tool, the one that I use the most, is Trello. And there's another book called Getting Things Done by David Allen. Um, it's a productivity system that the Franklin Covey planners. Your parents probably had those Franklin Covey planners. It's what that was based off of, but now this is a digital way to do that. And so very quickly, if you search my name and Trello on YouTube, I think there's a couple of videos that I've done through the years that you can watch and see how I use it. But you have 6 lists, and then within the list you have cards. Okay, and so your 6 lists are incoming and mind dump. So this is literally that. It's I just dump my brain on this list. As I think of things, it goes on the incoming mind dump list. I got to change my brakes, great, goes on the list. If I got to write an email, goes on the list, right? From there, I move them to different categories, okay? So the first category is next action. Next action is my to-do list for the day. Like these are the things that I have to get done, and it's in its smallest form, right? So like it won't be write my off-season program. It'll be like do day 1, Monday, week 1 workout, right? It'll be the smallest thing, because as strength coaches, we don't have 2 hours, an hour to dedicate towards things. We have 10 minutes between lift groups. We have 15 minutes before this, before this meeting, things like that. So I want it in its smallest form, so I don't have to think about how to do it. All I have to do is do it, right? and I can get a lot of things done in those gaps of time. The next list there is waiting for. So these are all the things that you're waiting for somebody to get back to you, right? You sent an email, but you're waiting for a response. You're waiting for a coach to tell you something. You don't want to forget about those things. So those are the things that are on, you write it down on your list, and then all of a sudden you have to transfer it over to another page when you get to the end, right? And you just keep transferring things until somebody gets back to you. So having a waiting for list and constantly going through that and seeing each day I'll go through that and see if any of those things I can get off my list for that day. The next list is projects. And, again, those cards underneath those are tasks. Within those cards, I can list a bunch of things. So a project might be write my off-season program. And then within that, I'll have a list of, day 1, week 1, day 2, week 2, I got to write the conditioning program. I have to think about, this scheduling conflict. I'll have that list going, and then I'll constantly be looking at that and seeing, all right, what little task can I take and move to next action so I can keep moving my project forward. The next list is someday maybe. These are things that I don't want to forget about. Like someday maybe I'll do them, but right now it's just not the priority. And then the last list is done. And that's just the psychology of crossing things off, right? Because how many times have you got to the end of your day and somebody's asked you, like, what have you done today? And you're like, man, I worked my ass off, but I can't remember what I did. This is your running category, this account of all the things that you've done that day. So you can rattle them off, be like, yeah, I did this, I did this, I did this. And 9 times out of 10, again, there's going to be plenty of times where somebody comes down and questions, like, what'd you do? And being able to rattle those things off makes it pretty effective for you. So Trello's a free app. You can use that. I would download that, create those lists, watch those videos on YouTube. If I can get to it, I'll try to link it into this segment on Circle as well. But that is the single most productivity tool that has, made it so that I've been able to get my PhD and write books and run side businesses and do all those types of things while doing an 80-hour-a-week strength coach job, right? Just because I'm super effective with my time. Other tools, Google Calendar. What I do there is I create a perfect week. And so I'll lay out the semester schedule. So I got this team, I got these office hours, I got this break time, I've got this workout time, I got this time set aside to make calls. And then I'll overlay that with my schedule. And then, so that way when somebody sends me an email, hey, can we get on a phone call? Then I'll look at my perfect calendar and I'll be like, all right, phone calls, and I'll write in, a calendar invite during that time. I'll be like, all right, hey, I can get back to you on Tuesday at 2:00, and I'll just push them for as far out as it takes for them to get to Tuesday at 2:00. Google Drive, I think it's super important for you to be very organized with your file system. So every new job I have a new file for. I created a winter, a summer, a spring ball. I dump things into those files. And so every team, it's very easy for me to go back and get to those files from previous teams. Because again, like it might be something that I'm getting a lot of bullets thrown at me. I want to be able to go find something, recreate it for what I need in that moment, and not have to start from scratch. Canva is a really good, creating presentations, creating logos, creating graphics. It's a good tool for that. Fiverr is a way for you to outsource things. So there's been plenty of times where I've had to do data entry or something like that, right? Or get a graphic created for a special workout or something that I couldn't get the creative people to do. So what I'd do is I'd get it and type it up. I'd go to Fiverr. Fiverr's it started as a literally just spending $5, but now it's a little bit, it depends on the job. But you can find people in Bangladesh and Portugal and wherever, and places that when you're going to sleep, they're starting their workday, and I would pay them $5 to go and enter in all this data for me, and so that way when I woke up in the morning, it's sitting in my inbox, and I'm looking like I'm super effective, and it cost me $5, right? So it was a way for me to kind of add to my workday, and just spend a little bit of money. Audible. I don't listen to music in and out of work. Maybe that's your release, maybe it's not, but for me, especially most of the jobs I've had where I've had 20, 30-minute, drives in, that's learning time. That's a chance for me to consume a book a week, and be ahead of the curve, and so YouTube, Audible, definitely use them like crazy. And then iMovie, ScreenFlow, those are good tools just to learn some basic editing so that you can put some videos together on your own if you need to, if you don't have a creative department. Lastly here, when you're talking about time, I made the mistake early in my career to kind of wear no time off, no vacation days, no whatever, like a badge of honor. Like I didn't take any vacation days for 7 years at South Florida. And, I was working like crazy. So when you get time off, you need to take it, you need to plan it out, and don't wait till the last minute. So like this what you're looking at, this is Little Gasparilla Island. It's in Florida. It's 7 miles long. It's 2 miles wide. You got to take a boat out to it. There's nothing on this island except for condos and beach. And so when I go there, like I can't do anything but relax, and I hate it, and it drives me crazy for like 24, 48 hours. But eventually I'll be able to relax. And that's what I need to do. And I can't get internet there. I can't work. So got to find something like that to be able to get out away from it completely and then take advantage of that. And early on for me, that was like a long weekend. Like I'd go, we'd have a Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday off. Just as long as you plan that and get away, the amount of ideas, the amount of creativity, the amount of energy that was created from those things always paid off tenfold after the fact, and so, and it's super important for family, which is what we're going to talk about next. All right, so managing time. The second thing is managing people, right? And family is the biggest priority to that. And so when you're doing this job, one of the main pain points that you'll face, especially early on in your career, is finances. And when you're making no money, you've got a master's degree, you're working 80 hours a week, and your family, your extended family, but then your wife, your husband, whoever, they would, they're like, they don't understand, like, how can you be so educated and work so long and make so little and all those types of things. And so it becomes conflict, right? And so one of the best books that I found is this Total Money Makeover. It's Dave Ramsey. He has a whole Financial Peace University and all that. He's a little strong in his delivery, but I think the principles are very, very good. But he has this money makeover. I can't remember what baby steps, 7 baby steps, I think is what it calls it, to kind of a debt-free and financial security. And so the very first thing is to create $1,000 emergency fund, right? Get $1,000 in the bank as fast as you can. The reason for that is because most emergencies, especially at this stage in your life, are going to be about $1,000. The brakes go out, your car doesn't start, I don't know, you injure yourself, whatever it might be. Like most of those things are about $1,000, and that's what most people go into debt for, because they don't have it on hand. They start putting it on their credit cards. They start putting it on it from people, whatever. And so having that $1,000 for emergency fund, super important. From there, you start the debt snowball. There's a debt avalanche, I think, is the other thing. I can't remember what it, but the debt snowball basically is that you list out your credit cards from the highest amount or the highest interest rate, and then the amounts, and you start paying off. So you make the minimum payment on all of them, but you put every extra dollar that you have towards the highest interest rate, and you pay that off as fast as you can. Take that money, apply it to the next one, take that money, apply it to the next one until it's an avalanche there. It's a snowball that you keep building up all these minimum payments to be paying off these other things as you pay it off, right? From there, you want to create, once you get out of debt, you want to create your emergency fund, which I think is super important in this business. It is very common for you to be out of work. It's not a question of if, it's when you will be fired in this business. It happens, and your preparation for the periods of transition are super important, and so his book will talk about 2 to 3 months of finances, because that's how long it usually takes me to get a job. In our world, that might be 6 months, 12 months, and so having 12 months in the bank of basic living finances is what I would call an emergency fund. So that way you can last for a complete hiring cycle and not have to take a job as a roofer or insurance salesman or something like that. Because that's what happens with a lot of people is they miss a job cycle, they have to have money, they go work somewhere, and then it just doesn't make sense to go back to the grind, or it's hard to get back in because you're selling cars, and nobody wants to hire a car salesman for a strength coach or whatever it might be, right? So having those things, having the 12 months gives you the freedom, and then you can do some side jobs and things like that to create some funds to keep that going. Once you have your emergency fund, then that's when you start investing in your retirement. You want to invest at least 15%. A lot of people match, so you always want to do the match whenever you take jobs at these different schools. That's just free money, and so usually it's a 5% deal with a 5% match or something like that. Always do the match. And then save for college. If you got kids or you're going to have kids, then start that early. And then from there, you just want to build wealth like crazy. That's when you want to go all in on investing and different things like that. So having the finances in control eliminate a lot of stress in a family as you go through this business, right? From there, obviously you want to focus on your family, or simultaneously. 2 good books, The 5 Love Languages. If you've not read that, I think that's really good. Just everybody feels love in different ways, right? Some people like gifts, some people like touch, all the different things. Knowing how your kids like to be loved, how your spouse likes to be loved, and making sure that you're making an attempt at that. Again, you just got to put yourself in their shoes. If you spend 80 hours a week on something, well, they think that that's where their love goes, right? And you love your job, and it is important, and it's all those things. But a lot of times, like me, you're probably doing that so that you can provide for your spouse and provide for your family and your values in that. But you still got to make sure that you're spending time showing them how they want to be loved. And so that's a good book, Raising a Modern Day Knight. Very good book in terms of helping to raise kids. It's talking about not letting society define things. Like, you're not an adult because you turn 18. You can't, you're not an adult because you had sex for the first time. Like, you decide as a family when they hit these milestones, and then you mark them with ceremonies, and so same thing in the weight room, right? You're like marking with ceremony, like the transitions from periods of training. So one thing I got out of this book that I think is super important with your family, it's 3 things. You want to tell them that you love them. Don't ever just assume that they know. Always tell them. Unfortunately, I've been in this business long enough to lose family members. I've been in this business long enough to lose players. I've been in this business to lose coaches. and you can't just take for granted that they know, right? And the number of players that I meet with on a daily basis that, they feel a tremendous amount of love from one parent, but they don't feel love from another. It's almost every other player, right? So letting them know and showing them is super important. Telling them that you're proud of them. Again, 90% of these guys don't feel like their dad proud of them, the parents are proud of them, and it creates issues as coaches that we deal with, And so making sure with your own kids, letting them know that you're proud of them, and then lastly, telling them what they do well. Again, too many times these kids they lean on society to tell them what they do well, and they're listening to the wrong people, right? They're not the people that care about them the most. So if you're the bottom line is this: if your home team's not right, then the team that you're working for you can never give your all to that team if your home team's not right. So always make sure your home team's right, and that way you can be the best coach you can possibly be. All right, athletes. Same thing here. Like, very much like your kids. You spell love TIME, right? So what you love, you'll spend time on. So if you just spend time with them when they're in the weight room, well, then it's going to be a very transactional relationship, right? So you gotta do the extra stuff. You got to spend time when there's meals. You go sit down and you have a meal with them. If they're doing something, they're walking on campus, whatever, walk to class with them. Go to their events, go to different things. Spend time with them outside of the weight room. I have what I call a why meeting now. So this is Simon Sinek, Start with Why. If you haven't read that, it's another good book. He has it in it. He has this golden circle, he calls it. So you got to know the why before you know the how and the what. And the reality is this: is that I have a meeting with every single player when we first work together, and in that I asked them three things, and I go into depth with this in other videos that you can watch. But I asked them, if they weren't a football player, what would they do? Because very very few athletes think about their mortality in the sport, right? Ask them what's the most difficult thing that they've ever gone through in their life, because a lot of times they're defined by their challenges, right? And lastly, I ask them who's the most influential person in their life, and I do that so that I can call that person and tell them something good, And so what happens is they think I'm calling for something bad. I tell them something good. They get off the phone. That person calls the most influential person in their life, calls them and tells them that they got a coach that cares about them, right? And so if you don't think that gives me a lot of goodwill with our athletes to have their most influential person tell them that I'm a good dude, you're crazy, And so that why meeting, and then we go into goals and all that kind of stuff. But having that why meeting, learning those three things helps me get to their why very much faster. Lastly, their discipline. The bottom line is this: is the carrot and the stick both work, right? If you have a stick, we have some accountability that is physical, that is challenging, all those types of things. But the key to that is that it has to be completely transparent. Like, you got to tell them exactly what, if they do this, they're getting this, and it has to be very consistent, right? So you can't do it with the non-starter and then turn around and then give the freaking guy that's scoring touchdowns the day off, when he messes up. Like, no matter what, it's consistent. You do it. Now, I like to motivate with curiosity and joy, so the positive side of things. So I'm always going to keep it that way and try to frame things. I always say, fix it with logistics. If we got a bunch of guys showing up late, why are they showing up late? Maybe we adjust something so that way there's no issue, right? But fix it with logistics. Create it so that they want to come to the weight room on time. But then if they don't, you got to have some accountability in place and make sure that you're consistent with it and they know exactly what's going to happen. All right, leading up. So you lead down with your players, your family, the whole, the whole deal. But you also have to lead up, and so those coaching relationships are critical. And what you'll learn is that you'll like certain coaches, you won't like certain coaches as much. There'll be people in the building, video, custodians, nutrition, trainers. You never know who's going to help you get your next job. You never know. So many times it's been a assistant trainer that I knew that helped me kind of get in somewhere or something, or Tennessee, it was a former intern of mine that was on staff that stood on the table for me. You never know, so make sure you're treating everybody with respect. You don't have to like everybody. You don't have to spend a ton of time with everybody, but you need to be very cordial. You have to be make sure that you have positive interactions with administrators, with your boss. The key here is four things, right? You want to keep them informed. You always want to let them know what's going on. Over communicate things that are, don't try to fix things without letting them know, but keep it brief, right? You don't want to sit there and go in there every single day and be like, all right, this guy was late, this person was doing this person's an asshole. But keep those things brief, and just be like, find out when it's ideal time to have those talks with your coach. And then just, hey, really quick, we had, a couple of issues. I handled it this way. I just want to make sure you're aware of it, or send a text, summarizing it. Hey, whenever you got time, read this. But overall, no big issues. But I just wanted you to know. You always want to show respect. You're gonna work for people that you don't always respect. It's bottom line, But you always want to show respect. Try to find the good in every person. Leave the bad. I always say take the good, leave the bad. Right? Take the good, continue on with that. Leave the bad, but you want to make sure that you're the person that's always showing respect. Avoid arguments, especially in front of players. You're gonna disagree, walk away, and then come back and make sure you revisit those things. And then lastly, estimate your advantages. There's going to be plenty of times where you're going to be right, and the head coach is going to be wrong, the administrator is going to be wrong, and understanding that, yeah, you might win that battle, but you're going to lose the war is very real in this business, right? And so don't overestimate your advantages. Go in, let them know if they're not going to be somebody that can receive it, just move on and fix it other ways. But if you handle yourself with respect and in the moment you let them win the battle, but then you come back and you're like, hey coach, here's some research that says this, and this is why I was saying that. 9 times out of 10, they're going to be like, oh, you're right, I'm sorry. And then the amount of times that's going to happen in the future is going to be less, right? Because you're going to have proven them that you're competent in the long run. Staff, I've made every mistake with staff. I fired a guy at South Florida for not coming in during a hurricane. I did that. I had to hire him back, but I fired him. Staff for me has been the hardest thing because, again, like I thought that I set myself through a really, really high expectation. And I expected people to act like me, to work like me, to do those types of things. And the reality is that you have to remember that Gary Smiley personality test, right? Everybody's a little bit different. Everybody brings strengths and weaknesses. You have to maximize their strengths and minimize their weaknesses. So in hiring, what I've learned is that hiring is where it's all at. I gotta be, spend twice as long to hire and be quick to fire if it's not working out. And so I do a lot with reference checks. That's a big part of what I do. If I don't know somebody, I've only hired 3 people that I didn't work with in some capacity in my whole career, 26 years. So that's very big to me. But making sure that you're getting references from a lot of people, making sure that you're spending the time to ask the right questions, to be around them, to see them work, to see them outside of the building, to see how they interact with the athletes. Don't just make a hire over the phone. Don't just make a hire like in a downtime when they're not around. Make sure that you're getting them in as close to the environment that they're going to be in to see how they handle stress, how they handle interactions. I found being very clear with expectations and responsibilities. We have a staff manual. We lay it out exactly what they're going to do. We lay out exactly what they need to accomplish in the year for them to have success. And then I always, this 1969, I always ask this question in an interview. I always ask, so who do I got here? Um, Truth, do you know what we did in 1969? Say that again.
I was not born yet.
No, I know. But do you know what we did?
Tell me or everybody.
And anybody can answer. Does anybody know what we did in 1969 as a country? All right, good. I love this. So we put a man on the moon in 1969. So like if we could put a man on the moon in 1969, we can figure out how two teams can train in the weight room at the same time, or we can figure out how to overcome whatever challenge we're facing in the weight room, right? So having that type of mindset, I always follow it up with the pink elephant on the 50-yard line. If I tell you to put a pink elephant on the 50-yard line, I don't give a shit how you do it. Find a way to get it done. You know, and having that's the kind of mindset that I need in my assistant's roles. Is you might not have the answer, but you can figure it out. And then the evals, again, a lot of people skirt through that. They don't spend a lot of time with it. They don't. It's not something that they're checking off as they go throughout the year. I'm keeping that front and center. That's something that's on that Trello board that they can see exactly what they need to accomplish and where they're at. Um, and I'll go through it and hey, you didn't hit this, and and put some consequences to it. Managing the money situation, that's super important. So again, a lot of the reason why people leave is because of more money, and so on the front end, I always let them know what they're going to need to do to see more money, right? So, hey, look, we're going to have to win for us to all potentially get a raise. So that's the only way that you're going to get more money. Or one of these assistants above you is going to have to leave for you to be able to move up. And that's the way you're going to get them more money. But whatever reason, in this society, everybody thinks that just because they did their job, they should get a raise. And that's not the way this business works, you know. And so laying it out exactly what needs to happen. So what I would typically do, again, you guys do this your own way. But let's say the job paid $40,000, right? Or $50,000 to make the math simple. Well, instead of paying that person $50,000, I would usually bring them in for $45,000, and so I would save the school $5,000 that year, but then I would turn around and give them a $5,000 raise at that end of that year. So now, again, I'm saving them another $5,000, and so I'm building in a pay increase each year. If they have a good eval that they could get. Yes, maybe I'm taking a little bit of money out of their pocket on the front end. But what I found is that when you reward them throughout the time, they work that much harder for you, and again, I usually make up for it in Christmas presents and other ways to kind of help them make a little bit of additional funds that we'll talk about here in the entrepreneur section. So I don't feel so bad about taking a little bit of money out of their pockets. I usually get it back to them in other ways, camp money, things like that. So, but I think laying that out, what they need to do helps you deal as an administrator in easier ways on the back end. Lastly, here, when you're dealing with staff, don't be somebody that meets to meet. Make sure that you're having meetings that are purposeful. So we have a daily check-in every single day. It's going to be a stand-up meeting. It's going to be 10, 15 minutes. We're going to go over whatever we got for the day, whatever needs to be set up, whatever needs to be done after lifts, and then that's it. Then we'll have a weekly tactical meeting. So every Friday, we'll have a tactical meeting that sets up the next week. And we'll usually lay out the schedule for 2 weeks, and we'll go deep on the next week. Monthly strategic, that'll be the third Friday every month. And that's when we lay out the next 2 months. And we always stay 2 months ahead. What do we need to do? What do we need to accomplish in this next month? And we're staying focused on our projects. And that's, whatever their project responsibilities are, they're presenting in that meeting. And then, again, this is a book, Death by Meeting, by Patrick Lencioni, but he has a quarterly offsite. I don't do quarterly. I do it by phase. So at the end of winter, at the end of summer, at the end of the season, we go offsite. We get some food. We go to a conference room somewhere in a hotel or a resort or a golf course or whatever, and we'll go through that phase, the winter phase, and we'll go, what do we like? What do we not like? What can we do better? And we'll do a quality control meeting. And we'll essentially set the framework for the next year. So, you don't want to wait till winter is upon you to start planning winter. You want to kind of like when it's fresh in your mind, you're like, that worked, that didn't work, boom. We kind of set the framework, and then we use the whole year to try to punch holes in it and, improve it. And so that's how you continually get better and sharpen the sword, is to have kind of a general plan, and then like, hey, we can do this better. We can add this in, or we can remove this, and keep making it better throughout the year. Resources, so managing time, people, and resources. So you're going to get a budget, when you're a head strength coach, and so managing a professional budget takes some work if you're not used to that, right? So first, you want to define your needs. So I have 4 lists. I have a make whole, I have a needs list, a wish list, and a major purchases list. And so very quickly here, make whole, let's say we have 12 racks and I want a TRX at every rack, but we only have 7. Well, then to make whole, I would have 5 TRXs on there to make us whole for the room. Does that make sense? I have a list of them. We need 10 more bungees. We need 5 more sleds to make us whole, right? Needs are things that we need in our program that we don't have. Wish list are things that I would like to improve or, add to our program that we don't need necessarily, but will make us better. And then major purchases are things like DEXA scans and VBT and whatever else, right? So I have these 4 lists. So I'm always prepared for when that coach walks downstairs and like, hey, I got $5,000. What do you want to do with it? If you're like, I don't know, let me get back to you. Well, then that $5,000 is going to be gone, right? But if you got a plan already and you know exactly what you need, well, then when you're sitting down with the administration or that accountant or whoever, like you're not looking like a meathead strength coach. You're looking like somebody that's actually prepared and is going to use those resources the right way. From there, you want to gather intel. So you want to know exactly what those things are going to cost. And then you want to do 2 comparisons. So we're doing plates. So I'm going to have Intex what I want, but then I'm going to have Iron Grip and I'm going to have, Rogue comps. What I do then is I make a packet. I on the top of it, I have like why we need this thing. I have what it's going to cost. I have our 2 comparisons, and I hole punch it and I put it in a binder. And so that way, whenever there's, again, an administrator, a booster, anybody walking around that has resources, I can pull that out really quick and be like, hey, like this is what I want to do. And there's been 100 times that I've done that, and they've been like, oh yeah, we got that, we'll go do that. And it was money that wasn't in the budget. So being prepared, ready to go. Fundraise, support coaches. Again, when I would go around and have meetings with the different coaches at the beginning of the year, talking about their upcoming program, I'd also have that plan ready to go. Hey, we need more TRXs. And so I would do the math out and be like, hey, if every sport gave me $100 out of their annual budget, I would have $2,800 to go buy X, that everybody uses, right? And so again, if you hit them in July, August, when they get their money, like $1,000 to the weight room, if you show them where it's going to benefit their team, they're like, yeah, whatever, and you have those things ready to go. Again, they also have camp money, so you can hit them during their camps and be like, hey, here's, if you give me $50 out of your camp, then I can do this. But hitting those sport coaches is important. Power Club, very quickly, I created an alumni power club where every former athlete gives $100, whether you're in the NFL or you're working at Verizon. It's $100. Out of the $100, $20 goes towards a workout T-shirt for you every year. $80 goes into our program, and I got that up to where I was bringing in about $10,000. Well, no, I'll take that back. I'm sorry, $70,000. I was bringing in $70,000 when I was at South Florida. That went into our annual budget. That was only $12,000. So you can get a lot of money because athletes that train for you, that work for you, that see that all the work that you put into them, asking them for $100 and they get a free T-shirt, like they'll do that all day, every day, right? But $100 extra bucks in your budget goes a long way for a strength coach. So something like that set up, and then we'd use social media to kind of promote things that we wanted to get. And usually sometimes you promote something that you know that you're already going to get, and then you get it and you celebrate it. But what happens is every time you post something like that, then some booster comes out of the woodwork like, oh, that's only $5,000. I'll do that. And you just got to talk about it, and you got to present it. And then lastly here, you want to take care of what you have. So like you might have a shitty weight room, cool. Make it the best shitty weight room out there, and if you do that, an athletic director is going to see that you're taking care of what you have, and then they're going to be more open to giving you money. If it's a mess every time they walk in there and you're asking for more money, then I'd be like, dude, you don't even take care of what I give you, so why am I going to give you anything else? So take care of what you got. All right, last couple of things here. Entrepreneur. So, you want to be a technician, you want to be a manager, you want to be an entrepreneur. You are your own corporation. You are your own brand, right? And so, but creating additional revenue streams, things like that, as well as marketing yourself as a strength coach, like that comes into really strengthening that personal brand. So to do that, define your brand and become an expert. So who do you want to be? You want to be known as the speed guy? You want to be known as the quarterback guy? Whatever. Define your brand, become an expert. Make your brand targeted. So now start to kind of interact with the people that are in that space so that you start to become known in that space. Establish an online presence and control the Google results. So start putting out articles, start putting out things that when you type your name into Google, these things are going to come up so you tell the story. I always tell people to create their own website. So that way, that's the first thing that pops up. You get ronmckeefery.com, that's going to be the first thing that comes up when you do a Google search for my name. Instead of the fans at Tennessee or somewhere else that just want to be freaking trolls on the internet because we lost the game to whoever, right? So control the Google results. Generate brand awareness through networking. Networking is mutualism, so being a benefit, so where you're giving as well as you're taking. You want to constantly give, so I always tell people to give 3 times for every ask. You want to make sure your networking is targeted to where you're specifically going after certain people to grow your network. And lastly, reconnecting. Everybody's had coaches. So creating that list, reconnecting with coaches that you maybe haven't talked to for a while, let them know what's going on in your life. I have a friend, I don't do this, but I always tell myself I should do it when he does it. But on my birthday every year, he sends me a letter telling me happy birthday, but also telling me what's going on in his life. And there's been plenty of times where he's told me something that's going on in his life that I can help him with, and I help him, because I know about it. So all those coaches that you interacted with through the years, reconnect with them and let them know what's going on. And lastly, create a system. If you want to really kind of maximize it and create a revenue stream, create some sort of system like Strength Coach Basic Training to where you can kind of let people, give them a framework or something that you can hang your hat on. So when you're period, I told you about this, preparing for periods of transition. There's going to be times where you're going to be out of a job. You don't want to wait till that time to be searching for answers. So you really want to be doing two things to kind of establish that financial security right now. You want to plug leaks. So example is every 3 months, so every quarter, I go through our bills and I'll be listening for like, oh, this cable company is offering this deal, this cell phone company is offering that deal. And I'll save those things and I'll call our phone company and I'll be like, hey, so and so is offering me X number of dollars to change carriers. And almost every single time they'll knock off something or they'll give me something or they'll do whatever, right? So if I'm plugging leaks, instead of $5 going out, I'm saving $5 a month. I just gave myself a raise, right? But you can also create multiple streams of income, right? So to do that, you want to clarify your unique value. You want to identify your market. And then what most people do is they just try to sell. But the reality is that you want to build a community. You want to build a following of people and then create a solution that naturally they want or need. And then plan a launch the product. Kind of what I'm doing with this course, right? I'm getting feedback. I'm getting, and then I'll launch this at some point when I feel good about it. This four cash flow quadrant here, this is Robert Kiyosaki. So you probably heard of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But this is he has another book called Four Cash Flow Quadrants. Basically, it's this evolution of going from an employee where you have a job to being self-employed, to being a business owner, to being an investor. So like strength and conditioning is that you're an employee. And that's what people don't realize. Even as like 26 years in this business, I'm still an employee. People decide my fate every single year, or whether or not I have a job or not. I don't show up. I don't get money. My job can be taken away from me at any time, right? Some people are self-employed, so like I've done things to where like I can kind of control my schedule. I can, but I'm still self-employed. B is a business owner, where you own something that other people are working for you. And so you have a system that works for you. And then I is your money working for you. And so you're investing. So I put this up here because, you're always going to be an employee, but you want to try to be self-employed or be a business owner so that you can let your money work for you as an investor someday in other ways, and so finding other things, whether it's selling video games or sports cards or um, personal training or creating a mentorship or whatever. Create some things to where you can have some things that you can take and maximize if you need to in those periods of transition. So where eventually I don't need extra money right now. So if I made extra money from something like this, that would just go straight into investments for me at this point because I don't need it to live. So I would really encourage you to be thinking about your career like this, to where how do I work my way through this quadrant. All right. Lastly, here I know we're a little over time. Again, I want you guys to provide some feedback on this course. What did you like? What you didn't like? What you would pay if this is. I know I kept it cheap for you guys and all those types of things. But what you think it's worth? What do you think is a no-brainer amount? What do you think is a stretch amount? Um, Let me know if you would recommend this to other strength coaches or friends that you have. And that includes the Circle platform, because this is going to be a combination of both. And then just kind of feedback on the Circle platform as well, and things that you would think how I can improve it. Maybe things you've seen in other Discord servers or things like that. Let me know. Just want to thank you guys. I hope that you've gotten something out of this as you've gone through. And again, this is meant to be kind of just an entry level kind of introduction to this thing. But I'm a firm believer that if you kind of start with the end in mind and work your way back and have a solid foundation, then everything, all your goals, everything you want to accomplish in this business is attainable. But if you don't know, you don't have a little bit of a map, you don't have a system, you don't have principles, you don't have these types of things, then you're just kind of always searching because it's still a very, it's a growing profession. Lastly, here, I just want you guys to stay connected in chasing high performance. Again, you guys are in through the end of the year. Again, I'm going to make it super cheap, for the monthly thing. Past that, if you guys want to stay in it, but again, my hope is that you guys give me feedback as to ways that I can continue to make it better, to where it's a no-brainer for you guys on that. But appreciate you guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for spending these Sundays with me.